So this is just something I want to talk about. Is people are worried, right? People are worried that the
I
Bitcoin comes around and it destroys the United States.
Yeah, I think this is a high level conversation that like the average person in our country is not going to have. I mean, this is a future looking conversation. It is important. And I do agree with Brad that the world's going to change. I disagree that it's going to be bad for America. What he doesn't mention, and that what many, not many, actually, a handful of people, like, especially in the macro uh, investing community, have pointed out. Um, for example, like Luke Gromen and Lynn Alden and some others,
Mm-hmm.
that, this sort of dollar hegemony has been really rough for like most Americans probably. We talk about people who are probably in Brad's district and his constituents, like the ones in the sort of lower income, middle income brackets, like have not fared very well since the 70s in terms of real income, things like that. Of course, if you're in the elite, if you're in the coastal elite, if you've been in technology or investment or insurance or banking, like you've done amazingly well in the last 40 years. But if you're in manufacturing or some other service job, if you're in retail, etc., like I don't know if you've done that well, right? So this idea that dollar hegemony has been really, really great for America, I think is really flawed. I think it's been
Yep.
great for like a very small amount of Americans, and it's benefited them tremendously. Like what Brad said, oh, it'll like take away our profit stream at the Fed. Exactly. Like where does that go?
Yep.
I mean, it goes to like the Washington elite. So let's cut that out. Actually, let's like remove that profit stream. That over time, this kind of just forces the government to be in a closer relationship with the people. No one has like a long-term answer as to like what that looks like. It's impossible. We don't have a crystal ball. But like clearly, like this reduces waste. I think it clearly will like reduce our ability to have these like forever wars and to have this wasteful social spending. We live in a country of a lot of different opinions. A lot of people have varying opinions on what role the government should have in our lives. There's going to be a lot of people who, and maybe maybe certain states, as we are today, are more, more about more government, and some are less so. I mean, I think you're going to see this in America, like increase this kind of like state by state nature of our country.
Mm-hmm.
And great, they can have those conversations, but I can guarantee you in a Bitcoin standard, like even the states that are going to be more about like government led, social support network are going to be a lot less wasteful. Like you won't have a
Right.
situation where like America today, where like we spend, I think per capita, some huge amount on healthcare, like
Yep.
government healthcare money, and yet like our standards in any reasonable uh, you know comparison are like way behind other countries that spend less per capita.
Right.
This is because of this
When you
enormous
can
amount
when you
of
can print
waste from the
money,
companies. Yeah, exactly.
you can just let's throw money at the problem. You can print it. You know.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so I think that like long term, like it'll lead to a leaner, meaner America that's like, better for the average citizen. Um, Now, something else I wanted to touch on is that like I think that Bitcoiners should think about this carefully, because we're in like a transitionary moment, right? Like in 30 years, like it's gonna be different. But like right now, you're gonna have candidates that are pro Bitcoin, and for now, there's not that many, right?
Yep.
And I mean, for me, I would think about it as like a single issue voter almost, or you could think about it that way. Like you're not gonna find a single candidate that you agree with on everything. And most of us in the Bitcoin community are very skeptical of politicians. Like some are better than others, but like in general, we're kind of skeptical of the whole process. Okay, fine. But I do think it's worth thinking about this as like okay, this person's pro Bitcoin. All right, well, maybe I'll support them. Because like we need to understand that Bitcoin is the thing that's going to change the system. Like some policy is not going to change the system. Replacing this person with that person is not going to change the system. But like Bitcoin becoming a bigger part of our lives and our social contract, that's what's going to change the system. So it is interesting to think about, like, regardless of like where you are on campaign finance reform, for example, or whatever issue you're on. Like, it's interesting to think about the idea of like kind of just being a single issue voter, right? And just being like, I'm going to donate to, and it's going to be bipartisan. There's obviously going to be Republicans, Democrats. There's going to be many different pro Bitcoin candidates over the next 5 years. It's interesting to think about the idea of just like, I'm just going to support all the pro Bitcoin candidates, right? As like a
Yeah.
strategy, Right. Like, I mean, we don't know, that doesn't exist yet because they barely exist yet, right? But they're coming into power now. And it's going to be great to see this like Bitcoin caucus, which is definitely going to happen. You're going to have
Yep.
Cynthia Loomis. You're going to have people like Erica. They're going to disagree intensely on like 9 out of 10 things,
Right,
but they're
right.
going to agree on the Bitcoin thing, which I think again is great. And I think again, much like there are people in the United States that care about one issue in particular, or maybe two issues, and that's really
Yep.
that what steers their vote. That's going to happen with Bitcoin. You're going to have, I believe internationally, we're going to have like countries are going to have the Bitcoin party, and like people are going to vote for the Bitcoin party. Like, and there's going to be other parties, but like, I think in the future, the Bitcoin party is going to be a very powerful party, and it's basically going to capture, I think, a lot of votes from a lot of people who are otherwise pretty disaffected, and they're just going to have one issue, and they're going to make, making it easier for you to be a Bitcoin citizen, basically. I mean, I think will be there, what their overall platform is, which of course is topical for you, a citizen Bitcoin. So
As Citizen Bitcoin. Yeah, I mean, these thoughts were in my head when I chose that handle, and the name of the podcast is that there's a lot more here than just money. This is could potentially influence the way we organize society, and in the future there will be Bitcoin citizens. And what will that mean? It's not just going to be some, in my mind, like anarchic, independent, people organized without rule of law or social contracts. But I think it'll be a more independent person that lives in a system that we have more control over, because we have insight into where the money's going. We have, we know that the government can't print money to empower themselves, et cetera.
yeah, and I think it's a two-stage struggle, right? All of a sudden, I think the struggle is quite clearly we need to get rid of the politicians who are enemies of Bitcoin. That's kind of the shared goal, right? Brad Sherman needs to go. He needs to go. I mean, he's a dinosaur, and he's a creature of the banking system. And regardless
Yep.
of what you think about campaign finance reform, he needs to go. And there's
Yep.
different ways of doing that, and they're not easy, but he needs to go. And at the same time, we want to support I hope we want to support Bitcoin candidates, right? Or we want to support candidates who are more open to Bitcoin, right? I mean, it's really I think a great thing. So, whether you're just focused on getting rid of the Bitcoin enemies, or whether you're just focused on supporting the Bitcoin friends, I mean, both can work. And I fully understand that, like, a lot of Bitcoiners, most of them aren't Americans. The overwhelming majority of Bitcoiners aren't Americans, but they're in their own countries. And I also understand that a lot of Bitcoiners don't really want to be involved in the political process. They don't believe in it. That's also fine. Bitcoin, again, I think is the force for change. It's gonna change the world regardless of what politicians do or don't do. But we can expedite the process for our own countries, and we can actually help more people get involved earlier than they would otherwise.
Yep.
I don't think Bitcoin needs our help, but people need our help. And I think, but that by opposing Bitcoin enemies to whatever extent we can, and by supporting Bitcoin friends to whatever extent we can get more people involved sooner rather than later. And that's the mission of Swan, right? So I mean, I think that kind of makes sense to me.
Yeah, I agree completely. And it's it's why we're here. I mean, Bitcoin doesn't necessarily need us, but people do. And I think we can shepherd, so to say, Bitcoin to the world in the best way possible and present it in the best way possible. So I think these false narratives that will come out, what we like to call FUD, will just get louder and louder. And so we need to build our megaphone through just a grassroots organic effort, through number go up and however else we're going to teach these Bitcoiners what matters and why this is important and how to answer those kind of criticisms.